In this third part of outsourcing from a decision maker perspective, I would like to discuss the main pitfalls I encountered. The first one has to do with distributed agile. One of the things that happened to me is that all of a sudden my offshore team was onshore. All of them, for a longer period of time. And that, of course, cannot be or should not be, for a couple of reasons. One is a human-wise one. Those people have their families in India, they work there, and they live there. And of course, it's okay to have them travel for a short period of time to get to know the teams, so you can kick off together. But it cannot be that you have them here for a longer period of time. You get lots of issues with traveling, with visas, but also on a personal level. People miss their families and things like that. So it cannot be that you do this. The other thing, which is one for yourself, is that your financial benefit of offshoring is gone if you have people for a long period onshore. But it's something which can very gradually get in there. Why? If you start working agile, you're going to kick off the team. You start to work together and you want to really have the teams together. So it's something which you have to keep an eye on. Next time I'm going to do this, I am going to keep an eye on it. And how do we set up the teams? How do we mix onshore and offshore? And how do we make sure we get to know each other, but we still work on different locations? It is something where you have to help the organization, because the easiest way is to sit on one location. The harder way is to do it distributed. And you have to choose the harder way because that's the context you're in. And it means that you have to work harder on the team aspects, the working together with video conferencing, with traveling, and get to know each other. But you have to think up other solutions than just sitting together. The other thing is, you're very happy from a C-level perspective, so you're good. You have great conversations with your counterpart, everything seems to go well, but in the rest of the organization, everybody's complaining. It's one of the things I learned from outsourcing. It's much easier from a C-level than from an operational level point of view, because the highest impact is on an operational level. There you have to daily work with people who are in a different time zone, who speak a language that resembles English but might not be exactly English on both sides. And it's much harder because you have the biggest change. Though on a C-level perspective, you can say, we're doing really well. We're operationally maybe improving, costs are going down, so it's all well. But you have to keep in mind that the people who are actually working together have to get used to each other. For them it's much harder, and you have to have an eye and ear for that as well. You have to give them time. And you need to help them to make sure that the transformation also on an operational level is workable, that's improving, and that people also have a bit of fun together, that is enjoyable. That difference is there, and it will always be there. But you need to create a smaller gap in perception of how good is offshoring working. Because if you don't, then you are happy, but the rest is not. And in the end, it will not work. Then you have the part where the contract is observed, but the dashboard is green, but success is not there. And you might think, is that possible? That is possible. Because your dashboard is green, because the KPIs you are measuring might not reflect what the definition of success is. You often think upfront on your KPIs, which is important because you put them in the contract. So it's something which has a lot of meaning, and people start steering on those KPIs. But it's also very important to keep in mind, it's a little bit like the operation has succeeded, but the patient has died. And you have to prevent that. So it's important to not just look at the dashboard, but also, are we being successful? What were my criteria to be successful? And also be honest with yourself here. Did I set up the right KPIs? Did I change my mind in the meantime? With all good reasons on what success would look like. Then you need to discuss and change, because otherwise you are fooling each other. That it's going right where it's actually going wrong. That also has to do with the transform phase. The first phase of a contract, the transition, is hard work, but it's manageable. I've seen that going well for quite a lot of times. It's hard to do, but it's doable. The transformation phase is much harder because you have the tendency to keep on steering on what you always did. And if you really want to transform, for example, if you want to save costs by automating, or if you really want to improve your quality by simplifying your landscape, you need to get into a transformation phase. And somehow it's easier to just keep on doing what you did. And I think it is really one of the pitfalls from the contract that there you start deviating from what you wanted to achieve with this outsourcing. So it's actually a good thing, which I also learned the hard way, to once in a while, maybe every 6 months or once every quarter, maybe that's too much, but to really look at not just how are we doing today, but how are we solving today's issues and maybe tomorrow's issues, and are we going towards the goal of our contract? So if we really had the goal in mind to simplify the landscape, are we doing the things we need to do to actually get there? And where are we in time? Because if you had a hard transition phase, you actually want to breathe. You think, oh, we've had this, let's take a bit of time, and then we'll start doing the next one. It's like going on a diet for me. I never do it because I always think tomorrow I'll start doing it. And then you don't. The same is with a transformation. So that really is a pitfall that you have to keep in mind, that you have to start doing. So to summarize, these were the 4 major pitfalls that I encountered when offshoring. First, there's the effect in distributed agile environments that you have your teams onshore for a much too long period. It happens gradually and slowly, but it has a negative effect on your cost and on the people's happiness. A second pitfall is that from a C-level point of view, everything is okay, but people are complaining at an operational level. Outsourcing is hard, especially on an operational level. That's where the highest impact is to be found. A third pitfall is that you observe the contract, dashboard is green, but success is not there. Sometimes the KPIs need to be changed during the run. And finally, the transformation phase often is harder than the transition. A major pitfall here is that you slowly start deviating from your original goals in the contract.